Hi, welcome back to me talking about my version of Marauders in podcast form with Emma. We are back out at college. Yeah. So far hasn't been great for either of us. It seems like we both just had a pretty rough time. For me, it was I got bronchitis. After I got a flare up from I got a flare up from riding the plane home. We learned planes are not my friend this break. It was not a good time. And then I had a flare up from that, and then I think that Friday, like I came in on Saturday, and then the next Friday I started getting like regular sick. So I almost certainly got it from being on the plane. So I blame the plane for everything, but then it took me another full week, like and a half, to start feeling better. I'm still congested and stuff. But yep, great second week of class where I just didn't show up at all. Yeah, so that was rough. Anything you want to share with the group, or just that it wasn't good?
It just wasn't good.
Oh no. So yeah, we're doing great. 11 out of 10. We're killing it. We're doing so good. But we are here now, and it makes me very happy because I have wanted to record very badly. And guess what? I remembered to ask questions. Isn't that crazy?
That is kind of crazy.
Someone said, "How's the dog doing?"
She looked so sad earlier.
Snuffles. Hi, baby. Are we sad? She's very sad. Okay, since getting back, she loved me for 10 seconds, ignored me for basically the rest of the day, and has just been a little off ever since. In the past couple of days, she's like been back to being like normal and snuggly and stuff. But yeah, for like a couple of weeks there, like she would like sit next to me if I asked, but not like voluntarily. And she was just a little weirded out. She was like, "I don't know, you left me." But she had a great time at like my roommate's family's house. They adored her. It was great. Let's find another question. Oh, somebody asked when we both first read like Harry Potter books. Like when did we, what ages?
I think I was in like first grade. I think my dad read them to me.
Yes, let's go, Ben. Yeah, I don't know when I did. I know my mom had some rules that we had to take it slow. I think it was more just because she wanted us to have the experience of like having them come out and like not just bam bam bam. So like we did have to wait a significant amount of time in between.
I do not think I had to do that.
I don't think we were allowed to finish any of the books, like finish the last book until we turned 11, because like that's when you would like go to Hogwarts.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think I had watched all the movies before I read them.
That was another big rule in my family. You could not watch the movies. You had to leave. Okay. Like the family would sit down and watch the movie, and I would have to leave because I haven't watched it, because I haven't read the book yet. Like it was very strict.
Because Michael had read them, and then we would watch the movies. And so then by the time I read them, I had already seen them. I didn't know anything that really happened though.
Somebody asked how's Herc? Are you that might be sad.
He's doing good.
Is he good? Oh, good job, Herc. Oh, do you have a favorite class this semester already? Do you hate all of them?
I really like, I'm doing sign language again, which is really fun because there's like, I know a lot of people in the class already. And then I also really like my chemistry class.
That's really fun. I think my favorite class right now, I kind of have two classes that go together, like music theory and oral skills. They're taught by the same professor. He knows that like more than half of us are taking them concurrently. So I kind of consider that one class that I just have every day. But I really like that. He's a pretty epic professor. In his own words, he's like, I'm basically I am one of the leading figureheads in the nation of teaching oral skills, because I am one of 3 other people in the United States that has a PhD in oral skills. Like, a lot of people that teach this subject are like, let's only do classical music. And he's like, I think that's stupid. He teaches that as well, but like also make sure to include everything else. So the playlists we get for this class, he'll be like, go listen to this playlist. And it's like Beethoven's 50 bajillionth symphony. And also, here's Flowers by Miley Cyrus. And it's just kind of, that's how it is. And it's a lot of fun. Someone asked favorite prank that the Marauders did. My favorite one is... Well, you go.
I feel like the sand was just like a
yeah,
classic.
You can't you can't really top the sand, you know? But I think my favorite is either sand or I just finally thought of a good one for their last like leaving school prank. And you'll get that in about 2 episodes. And I think it's a good one. I'm very excited for it. Because it took me forever. I was like, they have to have a last prank, but like what's their last prank gonna be? Like turning one thing into sand and then just leaving? Maybe. But
they turn everyone into sand. Then they leave.
They massacre the entire castle. Heartstopper? No. Thoughts on Applesauce?
I like it.
That's good. Throughout high school.
The go-go squeeze ones?
I want everybody here to know that pretty much every day of high school, I had a go-go squeeze. At least one. Maybe multiple, depending on the vibes. But in my lunchbox, there was always a go-go squeeze. And it was the apple cinnamon ones. And it was great. This one says cast the Marauders in Hamilton. But do you know Hamilton well enough to do this? I don't think you do.
I know US history well enough. I don't know. I feel like that's a little weird. Which president of the United States would James Potter be? I feel like that's a bit of a weird
George
question.
Washington, clearly. The audible sigh from you was the funniest thing I've ever heard. Yeah, I think James in the context of Hamilton the musical is 1,000% George Washington. Then we got Sirius Black. People may say he is Hamilton. I disagree. He's Eliza. No, he's Angelica. What am I thinking? Then we got Remus. No, I take it back. I take back Sirius. Sirius is
the chairs in the background that get like flung everywhere.
Like, so Sirius is Thomas Jefferson. And Remus is Angelica Schuyler. And then Peter is Peggy. Because who else would he be? You know? Because Peggy, at the end of Hamilton, we all know the big twist is that it was actually Peggy that killed Hamilton and not Aaron Burr.
Yep.
I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I just had to answer that one.
I feel like that's weird. They're real people.
Yeah, okay, but it's a musical. And so it's like, who would you cast as these people? The musical characters are very, very different from the historical characters.
I am aware of that. As far as I know, previous to like 10th grade, I did not learn any like raps written by Thomas Jefferson.
You're joking. You didn't learn his famous
We had
raps?
to come up with our own.
That reminds me, in that same music class, he has a couple of Hamilton songs on some of the playlists. Okay, for the people at home, one of them was Washington on Your Side, which has arguably one of the best raps in the entire musical, but he was just focused on the rhythm, so he just had the beginning part, and he was like, I have to stop it before it gets to the other part, even though it is my favorite lyric, and everybody knew what it was because it says a naughty word. And it's really good. But he was like, I really like it. I really like a lyric that comes later, and we all like chuckled. And he was like, "It's about never mind." Like,
wow.
just made me laugh. Sorry.
And he's the leading person in his field
in oral skills pedagogy. Just sometimes. Anyway, this is at the request of one of my mutuals, Lou, who requested that we wobble on into the next episode, and I think that's fantastic. So yeah, so if you're ready, we can wobble on into this episode. Let's freaking go. Me when I wobble. Okay. First thing about this episode is that it is a little... It's not super plot heavy because I needed a lot of things to happen, but none of them were like big enough for a full episode arc. So there's just kind of a couple things going on, you know, that need to happen, but I promise there will be like a legit... This is almost like a filler episode, except not really a filler episode because it's all like necessary. Do you know what I'm saying?
You're like setting stuff up.
Yeah, this is a building the tension episode for sure. So as we wobble on in, so if you remember, we left off. Sirius has his little tattoo. It's not little; it's actually pretty big. Tattoo for Remus, and it's so cute. But anyway, so the next morning, Lily goes and sees James, and she just like freaking waltzes up to the boys' dorms because who even cares anymore? And she sees him, and she finds James, just one James.
James. I think we've already made this joke.
Yeah,
it's really
but I
funny.
don't think oh gosh,
James.
I love James. But anyways, she sees James sitting up in his bed.
Both of them?
I know. But he has a freaking wound on his shoulder, and he's just like bandaging it up, and then he sees Lily and he's like, hey. So gonna quickly put on a shirt and pretend that this isn't happening. And he's like, hey, how was the wedding? How did the wedding go? And she's like, excuse me, sir. There's something else going on here. She's like, you got hurt. And he's like, yeah, it's fine. And she's like, James. And he's like, what? And she's like, I thought you knew how to heal things. I feel like we've gone over this before. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, so why is it still here? And he was like, well, so the thing is, regular charms don't really work on magical wounds. And she's like, did you get bit by Remus? And he's like, I'm fine. And she's like, you're not fine. You got bit by a werewolf, my guy. And he's like, no, I am.
It happens.
He's like, it's happened before. And she's like, it's happened before. And he's like, yeah. And I'm not a werewolf. But anyway, he's like, yeah, it happened. It's fine. And guess what? I didn't transform last night, so I'm fine. Something to do with like the animagi magic like protects you. So only like humans in their human form can become werewolves. And she's like, that doesn't make any sense. He's like, I know, but you know what? That's that. He's
like, anyway, that's one of the things you just gotta test out by trying it yourself.
By just trying it and just going. But she's like, you're sure you're gonna be fine? He's like, yes, I'll probably just have a scar. It'll be fine. And then he's like, so how was the wedding? And she's like, my guy. But she's like, Petunia was happy. And she's like, how she can be happy with who she married is beyond me. But then again, she thinks the same thing about me and you. So, and James was like, okay. And she's like, and although it's true, like Vernon is the worst to everyone else, he treats Petunia like she's like a queen. He loves her. Like, it's great. And so, James she kind of goes quiet, and James is like, okay, so we're going to change the subject. And he's like, so Sirius didn't cause too much of a fuss? And she's like, Sean was excellent. And he's like, Sean? And she's like, Sean White. That was his name. And James just starts cackling. And then they're swapping stories about the fun parts of their days. And yeah, because most of the castle is still a ball pit at this point. And they talk until Peter in the next bed finally tells them to shut up and that some of them are trying to sleep because it's like 7 a.m. But yeah. So several days later, Lily and James are in a meeting with Dumbledore because I did my research on British school holidays. And there's a big one. There's one for Christmas, but there's also one for Easter. And I remember reading about that in the books, but it never mentioned that anybody ever went home for the Easter holidays. Like, ever. Even though it's supposed to be just as long of a break as it is for Christmas. You know, they just like
I didn't go home for like Thanksgiving, but they live a lot closer to home than me.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. It's just, but the point is that it's supposed to be like they would have 2 weeks off for their Easter, for their spring holidays. Exactly. And they never mentioned that in Hogwarts except for like when Mrs. Weasley sent Harry like a bunch of chocolates for the Easter holiday, but they didn't go home for it, which is weird. Anyway, my hypothesis, my explanation for this is that it's just kind of a joke at Hogwarts because nobody goes home because there's just like a bunch of homework still assigned, and so like there's not classes, but everybody's still doing stuff, and it's just not really, people are like, we're about to go home for the summer. Nobody goes home. It's just generally not something that they're interested in. I also think it was like only 1 week instead of 2. But this year, with all this news of like the war and people disappearing and these rumors that Muggleborns that they don't want Muggleborns in Hogwarts, a lot of people are like, we're gonna take our kids home for like the whole break because it just seems like there's a lot going on and stuff. And some were even saying that they were going to keep their kids home indefinitely. So that's interesting. So, you know, Dumbledore is telling them this and James is like, okay, that's stupid. Here, at least everybody's safe. And Dumbledore's like, okay, but like many parents don't see it that way. Many magical parents believe that the only way to truly take care of their kids is to like to keep them at home, you know? And he's like, and many Muggle parents have at this point kind of heard the story of what happened to Lily's parents, and Lily's sitting there and she's like, yeah. And he's like, and they believe that the magical world does not want their children at Hogwarts, and therefore they shouldn't have them here anymore. They should just take them home. And James is like, okay, what the frick are we supposed to do about that? And Dumbledore's like, I don't know. I just wanted to tell you.
James is like, we're putting on another scavenger hunt.
No, but he's like, at this point, I don't want you guys to do anything. I just needed to like make sure that like you guys were like aware, because there's gonna be a lot being said about what people should and shouldn't do over the holiday. And also, I did, at the request of like hundreds of parents, it will be an actual holiday and they won't like get tons of homework and stuff. So anyway, so that happens. Again, there's no flow in this episode. There's just kind of a lot happening, but don't worry about it. It's all good, and I like it. And I'm not annoyed by it at all. Anyway, at this point, the entire castle has heard that the attack on Hogsmeade was like in some way legitimate, and they're like, so that's kind of scary. But they haven't. It doesn't mean that everybody believes that. It's just like that is kind of what is being said at this point. So some people are believing it, and some people are getting scared, and others are like, this is fake news. Anyway, so this meant, in spite of all the work that that Lily and James have done, James more specifically has done, there's still like some obvious divisions and fear happening around the castle. I can't believe the ball pit didn't work that well. You know what I'm saying?
And fear are happening.
That's crazy. But it just led to some more decisions happening. So although the whole gang feels like very strongly about the war, the fact that leaving school was like so close. It made them, for lack of a better word, like afraid, you know? They're a little bit spooked. And so they had all talked about like earlier in the year, and when Sirius like got on the money, they're like, we're gonna join the war first thing. And now it's like that's a little real. And they've just kind of stopped talking about it because it's a little real. And it's like they're 17. Are they ready to fight in a war? Who knows? So in general, like nobody's really talking about it. No one talks about like after school plans in general in that group. They're just like, what if we don't? Especially after Remus's whole situation, because he had like already made plans about his family and everything, and then he had found out that like maybe Dumbledore was exploiting him, and he was like, so do I want to be a soldier right now? Like maybe not. And so anyway, but James has come to a decision. And so one day when he and Lily are in the prefect common room, he's like, okay, like I gotta tell you something. And Lily like already knows what it is. She's like, okay. But she's like, okay, what is it? And James is like, okay, so I am going to join the Order of the Phoenix like right after school instead of finding a job. And she's like, cool. Are you sure? And he's like, yeah, there's nothing else for me to do. Like, I'm gonna go insane trying to just like live a life out there without being involved. He's like, I've talked to Dorcas. She thinks I should. Even Marlene does, even though, you know, she can't join because of her parents. She's a spy member and they don't know that. Shh. Anyway. But Lily's like, okay, what about your parents, James? And he's like, they don't want me to. He's like, I wrote to them a few weeks ago and they said I should wait and that they're worried, but I have decided to do it anyway. Cause they're not gonna stop me. Like they're gonna worry, but they're not the type to like stop him. But James going against Euphemia's wishes is kind of a big deal. But he's like, I gotta do it, you know, it's the right thing, blah, blah, blah. So Lily's like, dang, like I'm grateful, but I'm scared and like all this stuff. But she's like, you know what? To be honest, like, I think I'm going to do the same thing. She's like, I've been thinking about it too. And then James says the thing that she did not expect him to say. He's like, I don't think you should. And she's like,
James. Okay.
She's like, what? And it's like James Potter telling her she shouldn't join the war, but he was. So he's like, yeah, I think it's too dangerous. And she's like, yeah, it's a war. Like,
she's like, yeah.
Like, yeah. He's like, yeah, but and she's like, and you're doing it. Like, what, you don't think I'm capable? And he's like, no. And she's like, is it because I'm a girl? Is it because I'm a girl, Potter? And he's like, oh my gosh, no, Lily, I don't think that. And she's like, then what do you think? And he's like, I think that you'll be targeted first. And she's like, shoot, you know? And he's like, Lily, I talked to
targeted
Dorcas
first either way.
Well, here's the thing. This is completely my headcanon. I have no basis for this. In fact, I feel like maybe I might have said something that contradicted this earlier, but we're going to continue. He's like, Lily, there aren't any other Muggleborns in the Order right now. And she's like, wait, what? And he's like, helping. Yeah, they're like supporting, like absolutely. But like actually fighting? No, because Death Eaters would do everything in their power to make an example of you. And Lily, they already have. And you know, she's like, oh shoot, he's right. And he's like, you've already been targeted just for living, Lily. Like the last thing you need to do is to stand in direct defiance of the Dark Lord. And he's like, I don't want you to die, Lily. And she's like, about that. But she's like, are there really no other Muggleborns fighting? And he's like, that's what I've been told. And she's like, then I absolutely have to join. And he's like, Lily, she's like, no, James, I can't do it. I can't let another kid's parents die. I can't let another kid die. I can't sit by and let the big, strong purebloods come and do the fighting for me. I can't, even if it's you, you know? And she's like, if there really aren't any other Muggleborns fighting, then I have to fight, James. Like, don't you see, like, I'm sure the Order is great, but if none of the people fighting have been directly affected by what they're fighting against, this war isn't going anywhere. Like, we will lose. And she's like, you're great. you're wonderful. You will fight hard. I know it. But there's a reason your parents don't want you out there, because it's not your fight. You know, there's no reason for you to be there. He's like, Lily, like, there's a reason. Like, I would like a just world, Lily. And she's like, no, I'm sorry, but you didn't get like all the whispers since you were 11. You don't know what it's like to be ripped from your family and told that freaking magic is real, only to be in a magic world and for them to say, nah, you're no, because you're a muggle born. She's like, and then you can't even go back home because your family at home thinks you're a freak too. And you lose all your muggle friends because they can't understand, and you can't even tell them why. And then you only have one friend who listens to you here, but you're pretty sure he's awful too. But what else can you do? He's the only one who doesn't call you a mudblood until he does. And he's like, well, shoot. So James is kind of quiet. He doesn't have anything to say. And Lily's like, it worked out for me in the end, James, but I'm never going to get those years back. And I'm never going to get my parents back. So I have to fight. And James has a hard time with this because he has always been like the protector, always, you know, he's just protecting his friends and protecting freaking Remus by spending 5 years to figure out how to illegally turn into animals, you know, so it's really hard, but he realizes he's like, as much as he wants to protect her, he has to let her make her own decisions too. And so Lily's like, so are we doing this together or not? And he's like, yeah, of course we are. So fun conversations. Woo! Woo!
What a party.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's continue on this trend for a little bit. I'm sorry, but we're going to continue. Okay, but what about Remus and Sirius? How are they holding up? So Remus and Sirius really haven't decided anything about the war yet either, ever since Remus kind of confronted his dad and this whole thing happened. They haven't really talked about it. Like, they talked about it briefly, and then Sirius was like, okay, I feel like I gotta step back and let Remus like figure this out on his own, type of thing. And Remus has changed his mind like many times. Like, I feel like he went back and forth. He was like, nah, screw the world. I'm gonna stay at home and let Sirius's money pay for me. But then other times he's like, no, like, I have to fight, like, it's the right thing to do, you know? But it's like, you know, he wants to change an unjust world, and he's like, you know, maybe, you know, part of that is like, you know, having people see that werewolves aren't awful, but then also it's like, even his parents were prejudiced, and would it even accomplish anything? And is he really going to help anything by fighting people as a werewolf that people already think is dangerous? It's a lot. There's a lot going on here. But then James eventually comes in when, like, I feel like it's probably the same day. He just told Lily first. He like sits everybody down and he's like, okay, so I'm going to be joining the Order of the Phoenix, blah, blah, blah. And he's like giving his whole spiel, and it's like very emotional and stuff. And the thought finally pops into Remus's head, and he's like, if not me, who? Like, if he wasn't going to try and make things better, like, who would? What other werewolf has gone to Hogwarts? What other werewolf knows the amount of magic that he does? And like, who else is going to be there to be on the right side, you know, besides him? Like, he's like, shoot, like, I have to do it. And so then, and he had already kind of made up his mind anyway, but like, that was like the final thing, having James
and his heroic speeches, you know.
Yeah, you know, all those things. And so, like, as soon as James is finished, Remus is like, yeah, me too. He's like, ditto. No, but he's like, I'm joining, like, I've decided. And Sirius is a bit shocked because he hasn't heard this. They haven't talked about this, which is weird for them. But he's like, oh, are you sure? You good? And he's like, yes, I need to, regardless of what Dumbledore's motivations were. I'm here now, and I learned things, and I got to do what I can. And so, and he's like, and it's like what I was gonna do all along. He's like, my family already has a plan to go into hiding. They've already started. Like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And then Sirius is like, well, then I am too. And to absolutely nobody's surprise, But Remus is like, okay, come on, don't make this decision for me. And he's like, I'm not. I would have joined. He's like, I would have not joined if you told me to not join. But like, no, I was always gonna join, you know? He's like, there's no way I'm not gonna just not fight against my family, you know?
Seriously lives for that.
Yeah. But Lily's like, okay, cool, I'm joining too, and apparently I'll be the first Muggle born, so it's gonna be some trouble there. And Sirius is like, it's all right, like we got your back. And then there's Peter.
This is some fun peer pressure.
Yeah, so Peter has not seriously considered this in his entire life. He just kind of figured that like he's gonna get a job after Hogwarts and all of this war stuff is just gonna kind of go away, you know? And like he just, I don't know. He's like, maybe he was also kind of thinking, he's like, maybe it isn't as big of a deal like when you're actually in the real world and like not in Hogwarts where that's all everybody's talking about, you know? But it's becoming clear that that is not really what his friends are thinking. And he's like, shoot, like what the heck is he supposed to do? And so he's just like sitting like in his bed, like, cool
guys.
But he's like, he cares about Lily, like he does. But and he knows that like she's in danger, but also hadn't he just lived like a lot of his life with Kyra where she was fine, thinking it wasn't all that bad? And so it's like he kind of has that part too. Anyway, but then suddenly it's like James has read his mind and he's like, okay, Peter, I know we just had this big moment, but like you don't have to join too. Like this is a big deal. I know we kind of had this thing and like, but no, you don't have to do that. And he's like, no, I know. And he's like, but like I want to. But then he kind of realizes what he says and he's like, I'm nowhere close to a decision. So he's like, so he's got to back out. And he's like, no, but and Lily's like, you don't have to pretend that you have it all figured out. Like, really, no one wants to force you into a war. Like, seriously, like that's not serious. Anyway, so Peter is like, I'm gonna be honest, like I gotta have some time to think about this. And Lily's like, and that is fine. Kind of glancing at the others, especially Sirius, who does not look like he thinks it's fine. He feels like Peter has to have it all figured out. But anyway, so that's the end of that scene. All right, but Peter and Kyra. So let's check in on them. Let's see how they're doing. I'll give you a hint.
Kyra's like joining the war.
Like everything in this episode, nothing's like really groundbreakingly bad, but none of it's fun, you know? Sorry to tell you that. But anyway, so ever since that day in Hogsmeade, Kyra has like begun to change quite a bit. And Peter is noticing. She is no longer chill about the war. Like that's not something that she is not afraid to like admit her mistake here. And stuff. So she's like, I don't know. So whenever somebody would like bring it up, she would be like, shut up. We don't joke about that here. And it's like, okay, like a bit of a departure from where she was at before. And it's kind of also not Peter's vibe. Like, reminder that he joined this group while they were doing that and would rather just kind of shut up and not have that happen. So now his girlfriend is like being super policing on all of this. And it's a little weird for him. Because she was kind of like his escape from all of the war stuff and all of that stuff before, and now she's like way more into it than he is. It's anyway. So he's kind of frustrated with Kyra because of that, and she's frustrated with him. But anyway, one day like their whole group is like playing cards as they do, and then like freaking Corbin, because he's the one I always pick on in this group. Corbin. I freaking hate Corbin. He like makes a joke about like, oh no, like the Death Eaters are gonna come and get us, and Kyra's like, stop talking about that. And he's like, I'm sorry, like what has been up with you? He's like, I haven't been able to he's like, you haven't been able to take a joke in a while. And she's like, I'm sorry, I prefer to joke about things that aren't terrifying. Like, and not life or death situations. And Corbin's like, okay, you don't really think Death Eaters or whatever really wanted to attack Hogsmeade for like literally no reason. Like, come on.
He's like, why'd they say that then?
And she's like, I was there, you prat. I don't know if prat is a bad word in America.
You Corbin.
You Corbin. But Corbin is like, okay, like whatever. And Kyra kind of lowers her voice and is like, okay, I heard him threaten Lily Evans. He came up to our whole group. He was not joking. And he's like, with all due respect, Kyra, I feel like maybe you've gone off the deep end just a little bit. And she's like, bruh. And she's like, well, it's a good thing I wasn't the only one who was there then, right? Right, Peter? Right? And
Right?
Peter was there, and James Potter was there too. So, you know. And she kind of looks at Peter, and he looks around at everybody, and he kind of hesitates, and Corbin like sees that he's hesitating. He's like, yeah, Peter, tell us how a big scary man told you that he was going to blow up the entire village just for funsies. And Peter was like, I think we should go back to the game, seeing as I am about to win. And like the other people kind of like are like, okay, haha, and they like get back to the game. And it kind of worked on the rest of the group, but it does not work on Kyra. She's like staring at him, and she's like, bro, what the heck? Before she like throws her cards in the center and just leaves. And so the others are like, oh, Peter, you gotta go find your girlfriend. And he's like, oh my gosh. And so he does. He goes and he follows her. He's like, Kyra, like, I'm sorry. And they like get to like a little corridor or something. And she's like, dude, what the heck was that? And he's like, what was what? And she's like, you made me look like I'm crazy. He's like, Kyra, I just didn't want to talk about it right then. And she's like, you never want to talk about it. Do you know that? You never want to back me up. And he's like, okay, I'm sorry. What am I supposed to do? She's like, you're supposed to back up your girlfriend when she tells the truth. And he's like, I'm sorry. I am Kyra. It's just, I mean, sometimes I need a break. And she's like, it seems like it's more than sometimes. She's like, sometimes I can't believe you, you know? Like, you stayed friends with me after I made it clear I didn't believe a thing about that stuff before. And you barely tried to convince me of it. You let me figure it out on my own. She's like, it almost seems like you don't care that they literally killed your friend's parents. And he's like, of course I care about Lily's parents. It's just hard. You've known about this for what, like a month and a half? I've known about it my whole time here. If I were to spend every single day trying to convince everyone I knew about it, like, I'd be the laughing stock. And she's like, yeah, I wonder how that feels, and leaves. So
I am liking Kyra more and more.
I know.
She's growing on me.
I know. But anyway, let's talk about Sirius and James. Let's check in on the boys. We haven't had a good solid moment just between them, so that's basically all this is because I wanted it. But anyway, so a day or so later, Sirius is like talking to James, and there's like, it's getting to be more of a ruckus that like people deciding whether or not they are going home for break or not. Like, it's becoming an ordeal. And Sirius was like, they're scared. He's like, and I can't really blame them. I mean, like, did you see the news today? There was an attack that they had to claim was a freaking earthquake. And he's like, I know. And he's like, and Sirius says, like, you know, I'm excited that we're getting out there after this. And James is like, my man, excited?
Earthquakes!
And he's like, well, yeah, kind of. I mean, like, then at least we can do something about it. No more just reading about it and being stuck here. But James can't really get on the excited boat. He does understand, but he's not excited. I think Sirius might have some issues there, but that's fine. But anyway, Sirius sees us and he changes the subject. He's like, that reminds me. So he's like, you know, our old childhood plans about living together after school in the same apartment and never getting married, because we would stay up as long as we wanted and, you know, have that whole thing. And James was like, yeah, I do remember that. And he's like, I have some bad news. And James is like, you don't mean, hold on, you don't mean you found someone? And he's like, worse. He's like, I have a bedtime. And James was like, no. But Sirius is like, really, me and Remus are actually gonna go look at a few places over break, you know, just for the two of us. And James is like, oh, that's great, you know. He's like, that's really great for you guys. He's like, but just so you know, I will be over there every hour or so. So, you know, you got to factor that in as you're looking for places that like you're going to have a spot for me. And Sirius is like, well, yeah, I expect nothing less. And then he's like, so what about you and Lily? You gonna get a place together after Hogsmeade? I mean, Hogsmeade.
After Hogsmeade.
After the Hogsmeade weekend? No. He's like, after Hogwarts? And James like mouth goes dry and he's like, I don't know. And he's like, you haven't thought about it? He's like, well, obviously I've thought about it. And he's like, so you haven't talked to her about it? And he's like, no. And he's like, why not? And James is like, because we're 17, Sirius. And he's like, so are Remus and I, like, and he's like, okay, you've dated for like about a year and a half longer than me and Lily have. And he's like, and he's like, and you guys have been rooming together in the same room since you were 11. He's like, it's not my fault the dorms are set up like that, James. It's just how it works. But James rolls his eyes and Sirius is like, you're scared, aren't you? And James is like, yeah, okay, I am. And Sirius laughs and he's like, but Sirius is like, I don't think you have anything to worry about when it comes to just bringing it up. And James is like, right, so how did that conversation go with you and Remus? Because I'm sure it was great. And Sirius is like, so maybe I did send Remus into a mild panic attack, but honestly, could have been worse. Do you remember that? When he was like, so do you want to live together after school? And then Remus thought that like he didn't want to for some reason. He was like, wait, why are you asking me? Like, I'm confused. Yeah, anyway. So Sirius is like, you know, fine, maybe it didn't go great, but it was still a conversation worth having. And it confirmed that we both still like each other quite a bit and that we don't really plan on going anywhere. And, you know, he, like, says that, like, matter of fact, like, end of conversation. And James is like, did Remus like the tattoo? And Sirius is like, yes, he did. He's like, it was a very good idea, and he liked it a lot. But anyway, so Sirius kind of figures, like, the conversation's maybe going to change at this point. Did you hear that?
She said it's time for the conversation to change.
She's like, I'm done with this. No, but he thinks like the conversation's kind of over. But then James goes, do you want to marry Remus? And Sirius is like, So there's a question that I've pushed down quite a bit. Again, I think Sirius and Remus have a great relationship that only they understand and that they don't talk about. So anyway, Sirius is like, you know, I don't think we can, first of all. And James is like, okay, maybe not legally, but like, when has that ever stopped you? Like, and but you know, James kind of sees that Sirius isn't kind of laughing at that, and he's like, okay, you know, you don't have to answer. Like, sorry, might have pushed the boundary there. But Sirius is like, I know I don't have to answer, but like, it's just like, there's no one else for me, you know. I don't think. Actually, I know there's no one else for me, actually. And you know, he says with like a sense of surety, and James is kind of like, he's never talked about anyone like that before. That's kind of cute. But you know, because Sirius has always kind of just been down for anything, not really one for commitment. Not sure that anything would really last, you know. But Sirius is like, but marriage, like, I don't think that's really us, you know. And James doesn't know, because he's like, that's what happens when you love someone, is that then you get married. But then he pretends that he does. He's like, oh yeah, I know. But Sirius is like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I'd love to have a grand party in my honor, but Remus, he would hate that. And like, marriage would almost make us feel like we have to make things public. And I mean, like, we've talked about telling more people about just like freaking going for it and about what we'll do after school and stuff, but I don't think that's gonna work for us, you know. There's people who are gonna be a-holes about it. And frankly, why should they get to know about it if they're going to act like that? And James is like, wait, hold on. You're going to like keep it a secret after school? He's like, well, not from friends, but like, we're not going to start like making out in public or anything like that. Like, that would be crazy. And James is like, that would be crazy. Did you meet yourself in 5th year? But he doesn't say that out loud. And he's just kind of like, and you're like good with that? And he's like, well, yeah, like Remus would hate it. And if Remus hates it, Remus would hate it if I was a girl. Like, he just wouldn't want that, you know, that's not really him. And James just is really not understanding or not really expecting how Sirius was just like cool with all that, because he really went his whole teenage life. I don't want to say he was promiscuous because that has a different connotation. But it just wasn't like him to be like, you know what, I'm going to have a private relationship and that's just kind of how it is. Like, that just was not him at all. But it's totally Remus. And he's like, well, yeah, I'm going to do that. So anyway, so James is like, he's like, but anyway, Sirius is like, you know, and James is like, yeah,
you know,
I know. But then Sirius is like, anyway, what about you? Are you going to marry Lily? And James is like, and he's like, Sirius, I can't even ask her to move in with me. And he's like, and Sirius is like, okay, but you want to? And he's like, what do you think? Like, yeah, I want to marry her. And he's like, well, good, because she wants to marry you too. And James was like, well, great, thanks, I'm so glad you know.
This is what Sirius and Lily just chat about.
Well, yeah, I think every day they get together and they pick out like wedding colors and stuff, yeah. You know. But anyway, so that's the end of that little scene, because we needed some more bonding there, and we needed James to be like, man, Sirius has really, I don't want to say he changed for Remus, because I don't think he did, but he was like just suddenly okay with things that he was like, I don't know. Why does she stretch like a cat? Are you okay? Anyway, next scene, which is, I think, the second to last one. Yeah. So things are getting a bit more tense. Tension is still building. It's been a couple days. Actually, I feel like it's been quite a while. The spring holiday is a week away at this point, and it's the Monday night prefect meeting before that, and it's a whole thing. It is probably the most chaotic prefect meeting they've ever had, because I just feel like things have gotten crazy and kids are getting really scared and stuff like that. So basically, some quotes from the meeting are, or it's not even like a meeting at this point, it's just people discussing things. And they're like, the kids are going insane. He's like, people's parents are changing their minds at a moment's notice. And they're like, everybody's scared that they're going to be killed. It's like every prefect is talking except for the Slytherins, basically. Whoops. Wonder why that's a thing.
Who was that again?
Maybe it is literally a Death Eater. Could be wrong. But anyway, James is like, all right. He's like, I get it. I understand. Like, but we don't need to talk over each other here. And somebody's like, okay, what does Dumbledore want us to do? And he's like, Dumbledore wants us to make our own decisions. I don't think there is a right one. And they're like, well, that helps us. Thank you. We're here trying to figure out what we're supposed to tell, you know, the kids that are freaking out. But it's like, and one of the prefects is like, I think we should tell people to go home. That way at least they're with their parents. And someone else is like, are you insane? Hogwarts is the safest place on earth. If they stay here, then we know that none of them will get hurt. And somebody's like, what about their parents? This is one of the Muggle-born prefects. And she's like, my parents don't have magic. They won't stand a chance. Like, I'm going home to protect them. And they're like, Char, you're 16. You can't do that, you know? You can't put that on yourself. And somebody else is like, well, the Death Eaters want Muggle-borns to go home and to not come back. I don't think anybody's going to be I don't think anyone's going to be getting hurt for going back to their families. And it's like, well, isn't that what they want you to think? And someone else is like, okay, do we even need to worry about this? I feel like maybe, like, what are the odds that something's actually going to happen here? Like, I don't feel like this is even that big of a deal. So the bickering continues for a very long time, and Lily stays silent. And James is like, knows that things like this are really hard for Lily, but like, what are they have to have this discussion, you know? But soon, Remus chimes in very loudly. He's like, I want to know what Lily has to say. And the room kind of goes quiet, and Lily thinks for a second. She's like, do I even know what I want to say? Like, what if her decision gets like more parents killed, more people killed? But Remus is like, what are you doing for the holiday, Lily? And she's like, I'm staying here. I'm staying here because I can't go home because my parents are dead. So the silence at this point is pretty palpable. And she's like, and for the record, they were killed by Death Eaters because I'm head girl, because they didn't like the idea of a Muggle-born being a leader at Hogwarts. I was told so at my parents' funeral. They have threatened me several times. So no, I will not be leaving the school because I think it is the safest place for me or for any Muggle-born. And so someone's like, so you think we should tell everyone to stay? And she's like, I think that the ministry knows about these threats and they're going to do their best to protect the Muggles involved. And if kids go home, it's just one more person for them to keep track of. She's like, I don't know if anything will happen over break. I really don't. But I know that nothing will happen to kids that stay here. And no one had really heard Lily talk directly about what happened. You know, like there's rumors, of course, both from like vague things said in the news and like whispers from like kids who are in Death Eater families and stuff like that. But here she was like actually saying it out loud. She's like, this is what happened. This is why my parents are dead. And that's kind of a big deal. And Lily knows that that's like kind of going to change things because people are going to like know for sure that she said it and all that type of stuff. And that there would probably be more rumors and stuff, but it's the truth. Because she doesn't have anywhere else to go for the break. Well, she has the Potters, but like, you know, they're not her.
Just family. The Potters.
They're just vibing. So anyway, so then we have our last little scene. Again, as I said, this is just kind of very much sporadic, but it's Peter and Kyra again. So, as I said, we kind of did a little time skip there. So it's been a little while since their fight. And they haven't really been hanging out or talking at all since that. And Peter kind of has it in his mind. He's like, I think that the relationship is pretty much over at this point. Like, maybe not completely over, but, like, starting to be over, you know? Like, he's like, I don't know. We kind of made it very clear that we have different opinions on this, and I don't know if that's going to work it. But Kyra does not feel the same way. She's frustrated with him for sure, but he always just liked her for her, and he, like, let her figure out things on her own. So, like, how could she be like, well, you have to think this way, you know? That type of thing. But also, in spite of herself, she really, really likes Peter, which is weird. She just really, really likes him. And she's like, shoot, like, just head over heels for him. And so eventually, after it's been, like, a while of them not talking, she's like, I can't deal with it anymore. And so then she ends up apologizing first. And so she comes up to him and she's like, hey, like, I'm sorry. You were right. Like, I didn't really think about how long you've been dealing with this stuff, and like, yeah, things have totally changed for me, but like not really for you, so I feel like maybe I was overreacting, so I'm sorry. And Peter's like, it's all right. But honestly, he wasn't expecting that. Like, he didn't really expect for Kyra to apologize. He figured that he would have to do it at some point, but then she did, and he's like, I don't think that that's ever really happened to him before. And like, she used to never admit that she was wrong about anything until all of this started happening. And now she's like, yeah, I'll admit I'm wrong all the time. And it's weird. And like, now she's always talking about how great his friends are and how she can't believe that she hated them before and that she like thought that they were bad for Peter and all that stuff, which Peter keeps on thinking to himself. He's like, when I first met Kyra, she was kind of right. Like, they were not very nice to me at that moment in time. They kind of did just leave me in the dust. But now she's like, oh my gosh, and I love them so much. And she's like, I don't know. Peter, he feels like Kyra used to see things pretty honestly, and now she's like only seeing the good in his friends. And he's like, I feel like everybody always only sees the good in my friends. And she used to be the only one that was like honest about it, and now she's
weird
not.
Thing to say is that you don't want people to see the good in your friends.
Well, she only sees the good. She's completely forgotten that they just totally did not talk to him for like a solid while in the year, you know? But still, things have changed a lot between them, and Peter doesn't really know how he feels about that anymore, but still, he forgives Kyra. He says things are good now, and they keep on moving forward. So that's kind of the end of the episode. Again, it was a little weird, but I don't know. I still kind of vibe with it. I like a lot of the things that happened in this episode. I wish I could just make them flow a little bit better. But yeah. How do you feel?
I like Kyra.
Yeah. Yeah, I like her too. I like Snuffles. 1 second. Hi, Snuffles. Oh, hi, baby. I know. It's almost dinner time, but it's really not. You got like 15 whole minutes, babe.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. Yeah, those are the vibes for today. I don't really have anything else to say, I don't think. But yeah, I like all the things that happen. Next episode is going to be an exciting one. It's one of those ideas that I've had since the very beginning. One of my first things.
I might have heard this one then.
You probably have. Based around my favorite Queen song, Fat Bottom Girls. Do you remember that? Does it ring a bell?
I don't.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. You don't have to. And then the one
I know the song.
Oh, won't you take me home tonight? Anyway, I think we have only like 3 more episodes left in this season. I know. Isn't that crazy? But I think it's true.
Season?
Bruh, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Probably. That's where I'm at. It's okay. Probably right now, but I don't know for sure. Do you want to do another
I'm
season?
in.
Okay,
you're the one that has to do the work.
That's true. I have to write it. Yeah. No, I have other things I want to do, and also I want to get back to streaming more and fun stuff like that. Anyway, but right now I have to go to a class. So, do you have any more classes today?
No.
Why did you have to think so hard?
Sometimes.
Hope everybody enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Shout out to Metamorph Modest, Benji, and the caption crew. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Bye. So pretty fun. Hi, Snuff. You can't even see her. You just see the top of her little head. Can you maybe not lick? It's a little gross.
This is why she's so sad.
Because I asked her politely to not do that. I said, can you maybe not? Sorry, that might have been a bit much. Hello? Hello?
Why is she
giving me the side eye? Like, girl. She just went back to sleep. Okay, anyway,